I hear people say all the time, how do I connect to my intuition? I'm trying, and when I try, I either get nothing or I get a bunch of different thoughts in my head. I have no idea which of these are my intuition, are my inner critic, are the voice of my mom or dad that I've internalized. And we're left really confused about which thought to follow and which voice to listen to, where our inner wisdom actually is, and did we lose touch with it completely? The great news is, no, you did not. And I would argue you can never completely lose connection to your intuition, but you can get lost. You can get off the beaten path. And I think the reason so many people do is because we don't understand what intuition really is. So I'm going to tell you right now, because it's very simple. Intuition is a felt sense. It's a body-based clarity and a felt knowing, not a thought. The main reason so many people are wrong, frankly, about intuition or feeling like they can't connect and they don't know how to connect, no matter how spiritual they are and no matter how hard they try, no matter how much they meditate, is because they're expecting their intuition to come through as a thought, as an intellectual manifestation rather than an emotional, felt, body-based manifestation. So I want to dig into that today because so many of us are out here thinking that we've lost connection to our intuition entirely, but the problem is we're just not looking in the right place. We need to get out of our heads and into our body. If we haven't met, I'm Dana. I'm an astrologer and spiritual healing coach and the creator of Self-Help Witch. So we've already established the most important truth, which is that your intuition is not an intellectual faculty. It doesn't live in your mind, it lives in your body. And so we need to tap into the intelligence of our body if we want to be connected to our intuition and quit waiting for clarity in the mind to feel connected to it. The problem is most people are completely disconnected from their body's wisdom. And the reason for that is because they're stuck in their heads. Now, why are they stuck in their heads? Because most of us are trying to survive. We're in protection mode a lot of the time. And it goes beyond physical survival. Our brains and our bodies don't know the difference between a threat that's like a saber-toothed tiger and a threat that's like a mean email from your boss. Our bodies respond the same way to these two very different threats. And that response is to fight, to flight, to freeze, to fawn. And I'm sure you've heard of these nervous system responses. The really interesting thing is this response can be activated even when you're imagining situations. So that's why when you're anxious about something, for example, and you're playing it through in your head and you get into like an overthinking loop, you can actually trigger these feelings of survival within you. Now, when we're in a survival mode, we have a harder time accessing that inner wisdom that we have. We are immediately responding to the threat. And because that response is so immediate, which is a great thing, by the way, we want that and we need that because it helps us survive. But what that means is everything else gets hijacked or kind of put on the back burner so that we can focus on survival. In other words, to make it really simple, when we're constantly in defense mode, it's really hard for us to tap into our bodies because we're trying to respond to a threat. We're in our minds and we're focused on what's going on outside of us. And again, this happens in all kinds of situations that you would never expect. So if you're a person, for example, who was bullied as a child, you probably learned that to some degree, it's not safe to be yourself. So when you're in social situations, especially social situations where you don't really know everybody that's in the room, you are going to have some degree of that survival mechanism activated for yourself unless you've done a lot of healing and work on that. And it's totally possible to do, but that's a reality for a lot of us. So we're in survival mode because we're afraid, because we're responding to triggers that we learned at some point, whether in childhood or recently, that meant our survival was at stake in some way, whether that was social rejection, whether that was physical bullying, whether that was conflict with our parents. We've all got our own set of triggers that activate our survival mode. And we can intellectualize them and understand them and zoom out and look at them with a really objective viewpoint. And that can be really helpful in healing, but it will not change the feeling. The only way to work through the feeling is to allow yourself to feel the feeling, to get in your body and let yourself go there. Really just to let yourself feel it. Instead of putting up our walls and running from the feeling and trying to fix and tweak and hide and run, we need to just allow ourselves to feel that feeling. We need to get back in our bodies. And that is how we reconnect to our intuition, because that dissolves the fear and allows the inner wisdom to be felt and to come through. Now, I can speak on this with such passion and intensity because I am the number one person who needs to internalize this lesson. I struggled for years and continue to learn how to feel my feelings. I'm a Libra rising with the moon in Gemini. I've got other air placements, and it's just very easy and natural for me to go to the mind, to try to intellectualize things. My coping mechanism really is just thinking about things and trying to understand the logic behind how someone is behaving, why I'm behaving the way I'm behaving. But at the end of the day, that does not help you process your feelings. It actually keeps you from your feelings. It takes you out of your body. And it is what creates the feeling of disconnection between you and your intuition. Because your body is saying, we need to feel this, and you're not letting yourself feel it. I spent years in therapy, working with my birth chart, pulling tarot cards, journaling, reading, getting a master's degree in school counseling. I'm fascinated by this stuff. I love learning, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with using your mind and using your brain and learning about the psychology behind things, but none of it is a replacement for feeling your feelings, for getting in your body and allowing that energy to move. And that's one thing we really need to flesh out right now too, is that your emotions are ultimately energy. And energy wants to move. It doesn't want to stay stagnant. So what happens when you don't feel your feelings and you stay in your head and you try to understand it, or you try to fix it, or you try to intellectualize it, is you bottle up that energy of the emotion that wants to move. And it's really simple to let it move. You just let yourself feel it. And I know some people might think that I'm oversimplifying that, because it can be really scary and hard and confronting to do this. This is my own experience, and I can't speak for all people, but for me personally, the fear of feeling the feeling is worse than the actual feeling. I remember the first time I read John Bradshaw's book, Homecoming, which is like the seminal book of inner child work. And it comes with exercises and meditations. And the meditations essentially guide you through feeling your feelings and healing your inner child at all stages of development. And I remember just sobbing and crying like I'd never cried before. And I didn't even really know why, because I was at that point, I think, working on the toddler stage of the book. So obviously I don't really remember much or anything at all from that point in my life, but I was feeling things that I had run from, that I had avoided feeling. And again, why? Because I was in survival mode. I was trying to figure out how to survive, how to not be rejected, how to be loved. So it's important to say now too that there's absolutely no shame in this, because the reason we don't feel our feelings, or we avoid them, or we run from them, or we try to bottle them up and pretend they don't exist, is because we're trying to survive. We're trying to stay safe. It feels safer sometimes to not feel them, but we ultimately need to come back and feel them if we want to be able to access our inner wisdom. Because when we don't feel them, all of that energy gets bottled up and stuck inside you. And then it clouds your thinking. And this is where we get the voice of the inner critic, which really can fuck you up, right? Because you start to believe sometimes that voice is your intuition. And you listen to it thinking, oh, like I feel safe because I'm not stepping outside of this boundary or this box that I feel is unsafe. When the truth is, it's not your intuition. It's not your inner wisdom, which is the same thing as the intuition. It's your inner critic, the voice that keeps you small and stuck. And then you sit there wondering, am I broken? What's wrong with me? Why can't I figure out how to get out of this stuckness? It's not that you are stuck, it's that the energy of your emotions is stuck. And in order to get unstuck, you got to get in your body. So here are 3 signs that you might be dealing with this, that you might be stuck in your head. Number 1, you're overthinking. You're overanalyzing things. This can show up when you're rehearsing, right? Whether that's before or after an event. If you're playing it back in your head and you're thinking about, oh, what did they say? And what did I say? And what was the tone? And you're rereading the text conversation, you're rereading the emails, you're in your head, you're overthinking it. Really, the overthinking is fueling anxiety. And so that's on the surface. What's beneath that is going to be different for everybody, but it might be shame. It might be fear of rejection, a fear of being judged, a fear of looking stupid. If your clarity requires a lengthy pros and cons list, that's not intuition. And what I want you to do instead, if you find yourself in this loop, because the first step to changing this is becoming aware of it. If you realize, oh, I'm overthinking this, what I want you to do is so simple. Place your hands on your heart. You might do like your heart and your stomach. Breathe. Go from your head to your body. And you might need to do a couple of breaths. Like I would recommend at least 3 deep breaths. Exhale longer than the inhale. And ask yourself, what am I feeling? Don't think about it. Just see what you feel. Where do you feel it? What does it feel like? And then see if you can name it. And what that does is it flips the script from staying all in the mind to starting in the body and then allowing it to come to the mind. And what we did in that process was take you out of the loop of overthinking about the situation itself and anchored you back into you. And what we need to do in order to come back to a grounded place where we can, again, listen to our intuition, listen to our inner wisdom, is understand how we're feeling. Because that's going to give us so much information about why we're responding the way we're responding and clear the air for us to respond differently with more intention. Another sign that you might be in this space of intellectualizing things is that you feel numb, foggy in your mind, or you feel disconnected from yourself. This is so common because if you're not feeling your feelings, you are disassociating from your body. I almost think of it as, this is so weird, but if your head was like a balloon, it's like the balloon has floated away and your body's down here, still doing what it's doing, and your mind is just somewhere else. I think a lot of us do this, especially if we experience trauma. It's hard sometimes to stay with our body and to stay with our feelings. And let's be real, sometimes we numb on purpose. Why do we drink? Why do we smoke weed? Why do we go shopping? Why do we eat in the middle of the night when we're not really hungry? All of us do these things sometimes, not always, but sometimes to numb, to not feel what we're feeling. And so I think that's a really big, important realization we all need to have is we need to get clear on why we're doing these things that take us away from our body. We need to be able to recognize when we're doing them. So a question I would ask you if you think, oh God, that might be me sometimes is, what are the numbing actions that I take? How and where and why and when do I dissociate? What kinds of situations make me think, all right, fuck this, I'm out. I'm going to go scroll for an hour so I don't have to think about this. And look, none of us are perfect. And I would even say sometimes just a healthy disconnection from the situation. I'm just going to go do something else to occupy my mind for a while. I don't think that's always a bad thing. But I think if it becomes a habit, and specifically an unconscious habit, where you're doing it like instinctively without even giving yourself a chance to feel what you're feeling, that's when we start to frankly get into addiction territory. This is why addictions get fueled. And it doesn't have to be that serious, but it definitely can disconnect you from your intuition because you're not with your body. So if you're frequently arriving at that place of disassociation, of numbness, of fogginess, like I don't even know what I feel, that's a sign that you need to maybe calm down your nervous system. Because what that's telling me is you're in that survival mode quite a bit. Enough to the point where your disconnecting from your body because it's too uncomfortable. I'm going to give you an acronym that an old therapist of mine gave me. He was big on DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. The acronym is TIPP, TIPP. T stands for temperature. I stands for intense exercise. The first P, because there's two P's, the first P stands for paced breathing, and the second P stands for progressive muscle relaxation. So these are really simple things you can do anytime. You could be in the grocery store, you could be in your car, you could be at work, you could be anywhere and do these things. Temperature, if you can submerge your hands in like ice water, that's probably the least accessible one if you're like out and about. But if you can expose yourself to cold water, even splashing cold water on your face, running your hands under some cold water, this can soothe your nervous system. Intense exercise, if you can do some like high knees or jumping jacks or something that will elevate your heart rate, that can also bring you back into your body. With paced breathing, that's much like what I described in step 1, where you inhale for a count of 4 or 5 or 6, take a brief pause at the top, exhale for at least as long, ideally a count or 2 longer than the inhale. So if you inhaled for 4, try to exhale for 5 or 6. And I do recommend an open mouth exhale. Make noise with it. You can be louder than I just was. This is very soothing. And in fact, this isn't part of TIPP, but your voice can also really soothe the nervous system. So if you can really get your voice involved in the exhale, sorry, that was probably loud, but I just want you to know what I mean when I say use your voice. Humming can also be very helpful. Just like that. And then with progressive muscle relaxation, I think this works great really anytime because it's a silent activity. But sometimes I wake up in a panic in the middle of the night. I do have panic attacks, and there are times when I wake up in the middle of the night for no reason at all with just a surge of adrenaline. And so this is really helpful, I think, in situations where you're lying down. That's what I'm getting at. You close your eyes. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can close your eyes. You tense every muscle in your body, every single muscle from the tip of your head to the bottom of your toes, and then you progressively relax and go from up to down. So start with your head, unfurrow your brow, relax your jaw, right? Relax your neck, relax your shoulders, and so on and so forth. These are ways that you can come back to your body. You don't have to do all of them, right? These are all just different tools in your toolbox. The final sign that you might be in your head and disconnected from your body is that you're waiting for some kind of lightning bolt of clarity. We've talked at length already about how intuition is not a mental faculty. It's not intellectual. It's not going to happen in your head. It's going to happen in your body. It's a feeling that you have when you know something is right. And the thing is, and I really buried the lead here, I should have said this up front, the mind and the body are connected. They're not distinct, separate entities in your body working in a vacuum. They are interconnected by what? The nervous system. And so anytime you're feeling a feeling, that will inevitably lead to a thought. You will have a thought that arises from the feeling, but you have to first have the feeling. What's probably most accurate is to say intuition begins in the body. It begins in the body, and then you get your clarity in the mind. But if you're never in your body to begin with, and you're just waiting for the bright idea to come through, it's not coming. It's not going to come until you come back to your body. I would also say something that's helpful to remember, if this is the specific struggle you're having, of course, all of the strategies I already gave you, like the TIPP acronym, breathing, humming, these can help get you in your body no matter what you're dealing with. But if you are specifically like, yeah, I'm just waiting for this clarity and it's not coming, I think a really helpful thing to remember too is that intuition is not always like the most obvious synchronicity. It's not always like a sign from God, right? It's a nudge sometimes. It can be quiet. And guess what you have to do to listen and be able to hear that quiet whisper? You got to get in your body. I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but this is so important. An equally important thing to bring up here is that intuition does not always make sense. And if we think that it's an intellectual thing and we're waiting for it to make sense, we will be very confused. I'll give you a good example. when I was deeply disconnected from myself and my intuition, my first year of my professional life, the year after I graduated college with my undergrad, I was a teacher in a really rural school district in northern Missouri. And I absolutely hated it. There were things I liked about it. The kids were cool. We had fun, but it was very stressful and the pay was shit. Now, my then boyfriend at the time got into law school in San Diego. We're living in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, and I'm going to San Diego. Do you want to come with me? My intuition was saying, hell yes, let's go. It was an immediate yes for me in my body. And I knew that. But in my mind, it was, oh no. Because this was 2012, all right? And in 2012, the economy was shit. The job market was shit. I was lucky to have a job, especially being a brand new teacher. And I thought to myself, are you just going to walk away from everything you just worked the last 4 years, busted your ass the last 4 years to build? What are you going to do when you get to California? You're not going to be able to teach. You're going to have to take all these tests all over again. So my mental mind was going a mile a minute telling me all the reasons why it was not a good idea. And again, there's room for that. Like, I think that is a healthy thing to look at a big decision like that with your logical mind intact, right? At the same time, a lot of that was coming from the place of an inner critic. And to me, the inner critic is a voice that keeps you stuck and small and in the same box. It doesn't want you to go into the unknown because the unknown might not be safe. I did end up going, and I don't regret it. It was one of the greatest adventures of my life so far. And I ultimately went because I could not deny or ignore the deep yes feeling in my body. But my mind the whole time was like, how are we going to do this? I was scared. So I think that's important to remember too. Your intuition can feel really strong and you can feel scared and feel like, I don't know how this is going to work out. Really, to trust your intuition is to have faith in yourself and in your ability to take the leap and for there to be something there for you when you land. And I really believe that your intuition is connected to your soul and your spirit, and that your soul and your spirit is part of the collective consciousness. So when you get an intuitive hit, this is your soul saying, this is what we need to do. This is where we need to go. And your mind is not always going to be on board because it may not make sense. It may seem crazy, but your intuition doesn't work like that. It's a felt sense. So when you get a clear yes or a clear no in your body, even when it doesn't make sense, listening to it, that is the number one thing that's going to cultivate your connection to your intuition. Listen to those gut feelings. Because then over and over again, you're going to be building evidence that your intuition knows what the fuck it's doing. And you will start to believe, yes, I am connected to my intuition. So I hope this was helpful. If you have found yourself in that spiral in your mind, if you are an overthinker yourself like me, if you tend to intellectualize as a way to process your emotions and you're realizing that actually does not help me process my emotions, and if you want to get connected to your intuition, all of this hopefully was very helpful for you. And if you're ready to start discerning the inner critic for you, I've got something that will help. I created a 30+ page inner critic healing guide. It's very thorough and it comes with a quiz that will help you identify your inner critic archetype. And then you'll be very well equipped to start noticing how it manifests in your life. What are the triggers that activate that inner critic and ultimately get in the way of your intuition? This is a very important first step to reconnecting with your intuition, is being able to discern what is my intuition and what is a feeling of fear that's keeping me stuck in the same place because I'm worried about my safety from something that happened a long time ago that I still haven't worked through yet. So you can get that down below. I hope that you like it and I hope that this was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.